Necluda, the province where the Hylians and the Kakariko Sheikah survived. On the surface, it doesn't look like anything special, but in reality it is one of the most important provinces when it comes to Breath of the Wild's story and premise for its sequel. During the Great Calamity 100 years ago, this province more than any other played a crucial role in the survival of both the Hylian and Sheikah races respectively. Since then, with central Hyrule in ruins, the Hylians and the Sheikah that survived the onslaught have been slowly rebuilding and living simple lives in Necluda. With Hyrule Castle and its majestic town lost, the small and modest Hateno village now stands as the most prominent town of the Hylian civilization. In this video, we'll look into some of the more important locations, key figures, and the future of Necluda following Ganondorf's return in Breath of the Wild 2. So make sure to leave a like and subscribe as we set off to the province of Necluda and celebrate the 5th anniversary of this channel. Yes, my first real upload, if you can call it that, went up exactly 5 years ago today.
Located in the southeast of the map, Necluda is a mountainous yet green stretch of land which is divided into two sections, East Necluda and West Necluda. Its closest neighbours being Lanayru to the north, Central Hyrule to the west, and Faron to the south. Additionally, East Necluda borders the vast waters, with Necluda Sea and even a Ventide Island belonging to the province. Some of the most notable locations inside the province are Hateno Village, the Hateno Tech Lab, Kakariko Village, and Fort Hateno, which all played a prominent role during the Great Calamity, and in the case of the Hateno Tech Lab and Kakariko Village, continued to do so during Link's quest to defeat Calamity Ganon 100 years later, with the Tech Lab run by Pura serving to upgrade the Sheikah slates, both to grow more powerful as well as gain access to the photographs Princess Zelda took before the Calamity, which would ultimately help Link regain more of his lost memories, and Kakariko Village Elder Impa granting Link wisdom and guidance, as well as receiving the Champion's Tunic after recovering all of the memories in the aforementioned photographs. As mentioned before in the opening narrative, Necluda's role during the Great Calamity was the most important one of all. In the entire region, only one settlement, that being Daya Village, fell to the mercy of Ganon's army. The rest of Necluda was kept safe thanks to the efforts made at Fort Hateno, and later the subsequent sealing of Calamity Ganon inside the castle by Princess Zelda. Fort Hateno was one of two last stands during the final stages of the Great Calamity, the other being the battle for Hakala Citadel, which ultimately fell. Had the Guardians also overrun Fort Hateno, they would have been able to push further east and incinerate Hateno Village, and the last remaining Hylians that either already lived there or were evacuated from Central Hyrule. It also wouldn't have been long until Kakariko Village, which had the advantage of being hidden inside the hills to the north, was located and ultimately destroyed as well.
But besides being the location of survival for the Hylians and the Sheikah, it is also here that Link made his last stand, almost resulting in his death, and where Zelda was finally able to awaken her sealing power, which turned the tide in the battle against Ganon, and also saved the remaining Hylians and Sheikah from being killed. Without Zelda's heroic sacrifice to seal herself and Ganon inside Hyrule Castle, it would have been only a matter of time until all other settlements in the land, including the Rito, Gorons, Gerudo, and Zoras, would have fallen to the mercy of the remaining Guardians. Thus, after the fall of Central Hyrule and Akala, Necluda was the shining beacon of hope for the future of Hyrule. 100 years after the Great Calamity was temporarily halted by Princess Zelda, the Sheikah and Kakariko village patiently awaited the return of the hero. They knew that Ganon would not remain sealed for long, and his intervention was needed to finally get rid of Hyrule's biggest threat. They were ready to grant him the knowledge of the past, as well as lend him their technology when he made his inevitable return from the Shrine of Resurrection. The Hylians, however, seemed to have all but forgotten about the events of 100 years ago. They know Central Hyrule is still a dangerous place, but they do not seem to realize that the danger of Ganon is not yet over. They must have assumed that after the Calamity came to a halt, the threat was gone. And over the span of the last 100 years, little effort has been put to increase the defenses, train a new generation of soldiers, or any other precautions to ensure their future survival. We see no means of any fortifications around Hateno Village, or for that matter Fort Hateno, which is as damaged as it was following the defense 100 years ago. And speaking of Hateno itself, it has remained a relatively small farming village even up until now.
According to Creating a Champion, it is said that all of the Hylian stonemasons were killed during the calamity, meaning that the art of the craft has been lost. But come on, a wooden wall maybe, some watchtowers, maybe Snackston stones? Obviously Hateno has the fabulous Bolson construction company at their disposal, or better yet, invite some Gorons over. As miners they clearly know how to work with rock, also judging by the enormous monument in Goron City. This naive mindset really seems to prove that the Hylians are unaware that Ganon could break free at any moment. The remaining Hylians that are not living in Hateno have either settled in one of many stables across the land, inside the newly built Tarry Town, or travel the world alone or in small groups as merchants or for other personal reasons. The fishermen of Lurelin Village, although classified as Hylians, have lived a sheltered life far away from any of the larger Hylian settlements since even before the Great Calamity. They have developed their own culture and customs and thus are not taken into this equation. This begs the question, what will the future hold for Necluda when Ganondorf makes his return in Breath of the Wild 2? With no means of defense against the King of Evil, they are at great risk of being one of his biggest targets. This was, after all, his ultimate goal 100 years ago: wipe the Kingdom of Hyrule from existence. Since Hateno Village is now the biggest Hylian settlement in Hyrule, it would not be surprising if Ganondorf sets his eye on this village as one of his first priorities besides the annihilation of Link and Zelda, to try and finish what he started. Kakariko Village would likely suffer the same fate, having been the most loyal servants of Hyrule's royal family for ages and one of the biggest players during the calamity of 10,000 years ago. It is unlikely that Ganondorf is gonna let that one slide. Let's be real honest.
We of course don't know for sure what kind of assault Ganondorf would prepare once he has been freed from his seal, but judging by his track record, it is unlikely that he will be a one-man crew. In the past he has always been able to either find or create allies to help his cause. The brainwashing of Hyrule's soldiers in A Link to the Past, the Gerudo that stayed loyal to him like Twin Rova in Ocarina of Time, the corruption and manipulation of the Twilight Twilight Princess, the Yiga clan and corrupted guardians in Breath of the Wild, just to name a few. And of course, the creation of various types of monsters, most notably the moblins, pig-like soldiers created in his own image, seen in multiple games in the series. It is clear that Ganondorf has no trouble finding allies to fight for him. The Yiga clan, although scattered across the land after their hideout was sacked by Link, will undoubtedly remain loyal to him. And as we have discussed in our Gerudo episode, even some Gerudo might choose to side with their former king. In many ways, the destruction of the Kingdom of Hyrule 100 years ago created a power vacuum in Hyrule. And it is also clear that the various monsters around Hyrule can be manipulated by him, as more and more of them grew restless right before the calamity, even going as far as to perform coordinated attacks on travelers and settlements. And after that, he was able to resurrect them by using the Blood Moon over and over again. In any case, for both the Sheikah and the Hylians in Necluda, danger is approaching, and they might not get as lucky as they were during the calamity 100 years ago, when Link nearly sacrificed himself and Zelda accidentally managed to release her power in front of Fort Hateno. To this day, the fort itself remains unstaffed and in a state of decay. There's nothing except Link and Zelda standing in the way of Ganondorf and his minions reaching Kakariko and Hateno Village.
If this comes to be, then the villagers of Hateno have very little options of escape. They have no ships to flee out at sea. Mount Lanayru and the neighbouring mountains block any escape to the north. The only option would be to flee to the south, along the beach towards Lurelin Village. But this means they are even more cornered against the Necluda and Farron Sea. Yes, we can only hope that this one will not come to pass, as it is unsure if any of Hyrule's other races are willing to risk their lives to protect the Hylians in Necluda if Ganon chooses to attack them. They might even be preoccupied with their own defense and survival. Who knows? The Sheikah have some very skilled warriors, however, they have historically been trained in the art of stealth and evasion, not in brutal combat. The only reason Kakariko was spared during the calamity was because of its geographical location. The only entryways into the village are two narrow canyons, a bit similar to the Gerudo province, which is also shielded by natural borders. When Ganondorf returns in the sequel, they can only hope that he does not immediately try to retaliate against them. If he does, they will have little option but to leave the village behind and hide elsewhere. The Yiga have been spying on them and even infiltrated the village for many years, as seen in the Sheikah Heirloom side quest. So the location of the village is not secret to the Yiga, and thus no secret to Ganondorf either. They may be forced to take refuge and hide in a new location. Remember that Breath of the Wild had a story that was mostly developed outside of the actual gameplay, with most of it taking place 100 years in the past. Ganon's temporary sealing inside Hyrule Castle granted a type of freedom without too much pressure. allowing us to explore in peace until we were ready to face him at Hyrule Castle. However, with the sequel, things might work out very differently. It would be a bit of a disappointment if Ganondorf wakes up and then just sits on the throne somewhere, waiting for us to come and face him.
No, this concept is getting old, and it would be far more interesting if we could actually see the impact of his return on Hyrule's races and settlements. A place like Kakariko or Hateno might be accessible in the first part of the game, only to be abandoned, taken over, or even destroyed later on in the game. Similar to how Hyrule Castle town in Ocarina of Time had a pre-Ganondorf and post-Ganondorf version. It'll be interesting to see how the most important players in the story that reside in Necluda deal with the threat of Ganondorf. Impa, Paya, Purah, and her assistant Simin might all have to find a new home, or even worse, perish at the hand of Ganondorf. It would be quite unsettling if things actually work out this way, but then again, this is the sequel to a game which literally had a Hylian apocalypse. How do you even top that? Well, by actually showing us these events taking place, either through cutscenes in the present or direct gameplay. The closest we ever came was the description and maps given in creating a champion. Nintendo has a history of not showing us how certain important events take place, but rather only presenting us with the aftermath or a cutscene from the past. Hyrule Castle and town in both Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess, Great Fish Isle in The Wind Waker, and well, pretty much everything in Breath of the Wild. It would be refreshing to actually take part in these types of events, maybe even preventing it by helping to defend these people from harm.
A good example would be the defense of Hyrule Castle in Hyrule Warriors. Granted, this is not a canon game and very different from the rest of the series, but some elements of it could still be implemented partly into the mainline series. A fight for the survival of Necluda, like what happened at Fort Hateno during the Calamity, but this time through actual gameplay, would be awesome. Yes, we realise that this might be too much to ask for, and we definitely don't want to set you up for disappointment. These are, in the end, ideas and speculations. But it is definitely not outside the realm of possibility, both from a technical standpoint as well as story-wise. The return of the King of Evil should at least hold some weight, and have a direct influence on the rest of Hyrule. Again, we cannot repeat the same old man waiting on the throne from previous games time and time again.
That's all for now, and depending on what we'll see or don't see at next week's Game Awards, it will decide what our next Zelda theory is going to be about. We are excited to see what happens and hope for something big, just like what started our channel exactly 5 years ago. To celebrate, we have launched our Inside Breath of the Wild 2 merch collection, as this show is a continuation of Inside Breath of the Wild, which again was a continuation of Zelda Unknown, which started under a month after the channel's first real upload. So go and check out our awesome design by Purdemonium on Teespring, and don't forget to keep an eye on the channel after the awards are over, as we will make it our priority to get videos out covering the aftermath as soon as possible. We'll see you guys next week, hopefully with a new Breath of the Wild 2 trailer, or maybe even the gameplay reveal. Also, a big thanks as always goes to all our Patreons on patreon.com/commonrealm. Don't forget to not miss any of our upcoming videos, to like this video, subscribe, and press that shiny notification bell if you haven't already. We'll see you in the next one.